Commander Jiwoo pressed his palm against the cold metal of the observation deck as Earth's final scream echoed through the cum system. The blue marble that had been humanity's home for millions of years now glowed orange, then white, then nothing at all. The Galactic Concordat's planet killer beam had done its work in 3 minutes and 14 seconds. All stations report in, Jiwoo said, his voice steady, despite the tremor in his hands. The bridge of the research vessel Endurance buzzed with quiet activity as his crew tried to make sense of what they had just witnessed. Lieutenant Hannah looked up from her communications panel, her face pale. "Sir, I'm getting reports from our deep space network. Colony. Gone. Europa Station. ... Gone. New Sol on Proxima Centauri." She swallowed hard. "Gone, sir. All of them." The numbers were impossible to process. 47 colonies spread across 23 star systems. Billions of people. Children playing in schoolyards on distant worlds. Farmers tending crops under alien suns. Scientists making discoveries that would never be shared. All of it erased in a single coordinated strike that had taken less time than a lunch break. "What's the official word from the Concordat?" Jiwoo asked. Though he already knew the answer would be worse than he imagined, Hannah's fingers danced across her control panel, pulling in transmissions from across the galaxy. "They're calling it the final protocol, sir. Complete species elimination. The official declaration states that humans are evolutionarily incompatible with galactic stability, and pose an unacceptable risk to civilized space." Engineer Minho spun around in his chair, anger flashing in his eyes. "Unacceptable risk? We were explorers, scientists. We never threatened anyone." "We grew too fast," said Dr. Sunmi from her position at the science station. "In 200 years, we went from 1 world to 47 colonies. Species take thousands of years to expand that far. We scared them." Gu nodded grimly. Humanity's rapid expansion across the galaxy had been their pride and their way. Doom. While other species moved carefully, following ancient protocols and seeking permission from the Galactic Concordat for every new settlement. Humans had spread like wildfire. They adapted to harsh worlds, built cities in impossible places, and thrived where others said life couldn't exist. The Concordat had tried to slow them down with regulations and bureaucracy. But humans had a talent for finding loopholes and creative solutions. Every barrier became a challenge to overcome rather than a wall to stop at. That creativity, that refusal to accept limits, had made them dangerous in the eyes of the established galactic powers. "Sir," Minho called out, his voice suddenly excited. "I'm picking up coded transmissions. Human codes. There are other ships out there." The main display flickered to life, showing a tactical map of their local space. 17 small icons appeared, scattered across a region that stretched several light years. Each icon represented a human vessel that had somehow survived the coordinated attack. The mining ship Prosperity near the asteroid belt, Minho read from his scanner. Survey vessel Discovery at the edge of the system. Deep space habitat. Haven is running dark, but still transmitting. He looked up with something approaching hope. "Sir, we're not alone." Guwu studied the display. The surviving ships were all civilian vessels or research platforms, the kind of spacecraft that operated far from major colonies and military bases. The Concordat had targeted population centers and official installations, but they had missed. The wanderers, the explorers, the people who lived in the spaces between stars. "How many people?" he asked quietly. Hannah worked her controls, coordinating with the other vessels. "Best estimate, sir, ... Maybe 50,000 scattered across all the ships and stations, out of 12 billion. The number hit like a physical blow. 50,000 survivors from a species of 12 billion. They were refugees from their own extinction. Witnesses to the end of everything they had known and loved. "They're transmitting something else, sir," Hannah said, her voice strange. "It's a Concordat broadcast on all frequencies. They're declaring humanity officially extinct. They're already sending colonization fleets to our former worlds." The final insult: not only had the aliens destroyed humanity, they were moving to claim human achievements as their own. New Beijing would become an alien city. The terraforming projects on harsh worlds would benefit alien colonists. The monuments to human exploration would be torn down and replaced with alien architecture. Gu walked to the viewport and stared. Out at the stars, somewhere out there, alien bureaucrats were already updating their records, removing humanity from the official list of galactic species. Future historians would note their existence as a footnote, a brief experiment that had ended in necessary extinction. But they were wrong about one thing. Humanity wasn't extinct. Scattered, broken, reduced to a tiny fraction of what they had been, but not dead. Not yet. Send a message to all surviving vessels, Jiwoo ordered. Tell them to maintain radio silence and avoid all shipping lanes. We're officially dead now, and that gives us an advantage they won't expect. He turned back to his crew, seeing determination replacing despair in their faces. Log this date, he said. Today, humanity died in the eyes of the galaxy. Tomorrow, we decide what we become in the shadows. Salvage Chief Dongmin floated in the darkness between two twisted pieces of metal, his breath coming in controlled puffs inside his helmet. The wreckage of the Concordat supply convoy stretched 4 kilometers around him, a graveyard of alien technology spinning slowly in the void. His team moved through the debris like shadows, their modified suits absorbing light and heat to make them nearly invisible to any scanning equipment. 5 years had passed since the erasure, and the surviving humans had learned to live like ghosts. They took what they needed from the galaxy's garbage, hiding in places where no respectable alien would ever think to look. Broken asteroid fields, the dark spaces between star systems, the cold regions where even sensors struggled to function properly. Movement on the port side, whispered Specialist Young Hee through the comm channel. Looks like their security drone is making another sweep. Dongmin checked his scanner and saw the blip moving toward their position. The drone was standard Concordat technology, designed to watch for salvage pirates and claim jumpers. It would scan for metal signatures, heat patterns, and electronic emissions. But it wouldn't find them. The humans had learned to be very good at not being found. Hold position, Dongmin ordered. Let it pass. The drone drifted by just 20 meters away, its sensors sweeping back and forth across the wreckage. The humans remained perfectly still, their suits running on minimal power, their tools shut down and cold. To the drone sensors were just more pieces of debris floating in space. When the drone moved on, the team resumed their work. Young Hee used a modified plasma cutter to carefully slice through the hull of a cargo pod, while engineer Kijun S worked to extract useful components from a damaged navigation system. Every piece of technology they recovered was valuable, either for their own use or for trade with other survivor groups. Got something, Young Hee said, pulling a small device. From the cargo pod, memory core looks intact, military-grade encryption. Dongmin took the device and plugged it into his portable decoder. The screen flickered to life, showing shipping records and cargo manifests. His jaw tightened as he read the information. The convoy had been carrying supplies to New Terra, one of the former human colonies. Construction materials, he read aloud, prefabricated housing units, atmospheric processors. He scrolled through more entries. They're building a new city there, calling it New Vorthon. The aliens weren't just occupying human worlds. They were erasing every trace that humans had ever existed there. Cities humanity had built were being torn down. The names were being changed. The history was being rewritten, as if 12 billion people had never lived and died and dreamed under those alien skies. Sir Keatron called out, "You need to see this." Dongmin pushed off from the cargo pod and drifted over to where Kijun was working on the navigation system. The engineer had managed to access the ship's communication logs, and the screen showed recent transmissions between Concordat vessels. "They're talking about ghost sightings," Kijun said. "Ships appearing on sensors and then vanishing. Cargo disappearing from convoys. The military thinks it might be a new type of space pirate." Dongmin smiled grimly. The other survivor groups were getting bolder too. Across the galaxy, the scattered remnants of humanity were learning to strike back in small ways. They couldn't fight the Concordat directly, but they could make life difficult for the aliens. A missing cargo shipment here, a damaged communication. Relay their mysterious equipment failures that couldn't be explained. They don't know it's us, Young-hee said. They think we're all dead. Good, Dongmin replied. Let them keep thinking that. The team finished their work and prepared to leave. They had collected enough useful technology to keep their hidden base running for another few months. More importantly, they had gathered intelligence about Concordat. Operations in the former human sectors as they packed their equipment, Dongmin thought about the base they would return to. It was built inside a hollowed-out asteroid, hidden in a region of space that most aliens considered worthless. The survivors had carved out living spaces, workshops, and hydroponic gardens from the raw rock. They had learned to recycle everything. To make every scrap of material count, they called themselves the Forgotten, and they had learned to live in the spaces between the official galaxy. They forged identification codes that would pass casual inspection. They mimicked alien communication patterns and learned to speak like the various species they encountered. They survived on what others threw away and built their future from salvaged dreams. The galaxy thought humanity was extinct, and that mistake was proving very useful. Dead species didn't steal cargo. Dead species didn't hack communication networks. Dead species didn't watch and learn and plan for the future. Ready to head home, Young-hee reported. Dong Dash-min took one last look at the convoy wreckage. In a few hours, a Concordat recovery team would arrive to claim the valuable materials. They would find the hulk stripped of useful technology, but they would assume it was the work of ordinary pirates. They would file their reports and move on, never suspecting that the ghosts of humanity were watching from the darkness. Let's go, Dongmin said. We have work to do. Their ship, a modified freighter that looked like a piece of space junk, powered up its engines and slipped away into the void. Behind them, the wreckage continued its slow dance around the distant star. Keeping its secrets in the silence of space, Dr. Sujin pressed her hand against the smooth surface of the hybrid control panel, feeling the subtle vibrations that told her the system was responding to her touch. The interface glowed with patterns that would have looked like random chaos to most aliens. But to her enhanced perception, it was as readable as simple text. The laboratory had been carved from the frozen heart of a comet, its walls lined with salvaged equipment that hummed quietly in the thin atmosphere. Ice crystals formed constantly on every surface, and the temperature never rose above freezing. 5 years ago, no human could have worked in these conditions for more than a few minutes without heavy protective gear. Now Sujin wore only a thin jumpsuit and felt perfectly comfortable. The neural mapping is complete, she said to her research team, her breath visible in small puffs. Look at these patterns. Technician Hyansik leaned over her shoulder to study the display. The brain scans showed human neural networks that looked nothing like the textbook diagrams from before the erasure. New pathways had formed, connecting regions that had never worked together in baseline humans. The visual processing centers had grown larger and more complex. The threat assessment areas of the brain showed activity levels that should have been impossible. We're processing information at 3 times the normal rate, Sujin explained. Our brains are running parallel threat analysis on everything we encounter. We see patterns that used to be invisible to us. She pulled up another screen, showing reaction time tests. The survivors consistently scored better than pre-erasure humans, often by factors that seemed impossible. Their reflexes had become so fast that they could dodge attacks that would have killed their ancestors. It's not just speed, said researcher Min-young from her workstation across the lab. Watch this. She activated a holographic display that showed a complex 3-dimensional maze filled with moving obstacles. Before the erasure, it would have taken a human several minutes to find a safe path through the maze. The survivors could solve it. In seconds, their minds automatically calculating trajectories and timing that would have required computers to process. The stress of constant survival has rewired us, Sujin said. Our brains treat every moment as a potential life or death situation. We've become hyper-aware of our environment in ways that evolution never intended. Hyansik moved to his own workstation, where he was assembling a weapon that looked like no tool in any alien database. It combined human engineering with stolen Concordat technology, but the design was something entirely new. The weapon could shift between different configurations, adapting to whatever threat it faced. The old humans built tools for specific purposes, Hyansik said as he tested the weapon's targeting system. We build tools that think and adapt. Our technology is becoming as unpredictable as we are. The weapon in his hands was a perfect example. It could function as a precision cutting tool, a defensive barrier generator, or a devastating energy weapon, depending on what its user needed. The aliens had never seen anything like it because it operated on principles that their logical minds couldn't grasp. They think in straight lines, Min-Young observed. Problem, analysis, solution. We think in spirals now. We see connections. They miss. Sujin nodded and pulled up a tactical display showing recent survivor operations. The pattern of attacks and retreats looked random to alien analysts, but to human eyes, it was clearly a coordinated strategy. The survivors were learning to fight in ways that alien military doctrine couldn't predict or counter. Show them the psychological profiles, Hyansik said. Sujin switched to another display that showed personality assessments of the survivors. The results were startling. Fear responses had been replaced by calculating calmness. Pain tolerance had increased dramatically. The normal human reluctance to take risks had been replaced by an almost supernatural ability to function under extreme stress. We're not just physically different, she explained. We're emotionally and psychologically adapted for survival in hostile environments. We can make decisions under pressure that would paralyze normal humans. The research team had been studying these changes for 2 years, trying to understand what humanity was becoming. The survivors weren't just tougher or smarter than their predecessors. They were fundamentally different, evolved for a galaxy that wanted them dead. The biotechnology responds to our new neural patterns, Sujin said, touching the control panel again. It reads our enhanced brain activity and adapts its functions accordingly. We're not just using alien technology anymore. We're improving it. The hybrid systems they had developed were beyond anything the Concordat had achieved. By combining human creativity with alien engineering, they had created tools that could think, adapt, and evolve. Their ships could repair themselves. Their weapons could learn from each battle. Their life support systems could function in environments that would kill any other species. The aliens wanted to eliminate us because we were too unpredictable, Min-Young said. They were afraid we would become something dangerous. Sujin looked around at her team, seeing the changes in their faces. Their eyes moved constantly, scanning for threats that weren't there. Their hands never stopped moving, always ready to react to sudden danger. They could work for days without sleep, survive on minimal food, and think their way out of situations that would trap any other species. They created exactly what they feared, she said quietly. By trying to destroy us, they forced us to become something far more dangerous than we ever were before. The laboratory hummed around them, filled with technology that shouldn't exist, and operated by humans who shouldn't have survived. In the cold darkness of space, humanity was becoming something new. Captain Genesio floated in the command chair of his ship, watching the alien mining station through sensors at the facilities. Security couldn't detect. The station hung in space like a metal flower, its arms extending deep into the asteroid it was slowly consuming. Hundreds of alien workers moved through its corridors, completely unaware that death was watching from the darkness. All systems ready, reported Navigator Yunbai from her position at the hybrid control panel. Stealth field is holding steady. It can't see us, even if we were sitting on their landing pad. The ship they commanded looked like nothing in any official database. It had been built from salvaged parts and human ingenuity, powered by engines that combined alien technology with human creativity. The result was a vessel that could appear and disappear like a ghost, moving through space in ways that violated everything the Concordat knew about physics. Target their communication array first, Genesio ordered, then defensive systems. Leave the life support intact. Sir, asked Weapons Officer Taman, are we taking prisoners? Genesio shook his head. No prisoners, no survivors, no witnesses. They need to find an empty station with no explanation for what happened. The attack began without warning. Energy beams lanced out from the invisible ship, striking the mining station's communication dishes with surgical precision. The aliens, Inside had no time to send a distress signal before their connection to the outside galaxy was severed. Then the defensive turrets exploded in brilliant flashes, leaving the station helpless. Boarding teams, go. John SEO commanded 20 humans in adaptive armor materialized on the station's main deck, appearing from nowhere like vengeful spirits. The aliens who saw them had only seconds to register their shock before the humans struck with inhuman speed and precision. The survivors moved through the corridors like a force of nature, eliminating resistance with weapons that seemed to anticipate their targets. Movements. The mining station's crew never had a chance to understand what was happening. One moment, they were working normally. The next, their facility was under attack by enemies who shouldn't exist. The humans struck without making demands, without explaining their presence, without following any logical military strategy. In 17 minutes, it was over. Station secured, reported Strike Team Leader Wu Jin. All alien personnel eliminated. No human casualties. Excellent, Genesio replied. Plant the devices and withdraw. It looked like equipment failure. Strike teams moved efficiently through the station, placing small devices that would eventually cause critical systems to malfunction. When the Concordat investigation team arrived, they would find a mining facility that had suffered catastrophic system failures. The alien bodies would be gone, ejected into space where they would never be found. As the humans withdrew to their invisible ship, Genesio studied the tactical display. This was the 15th such attack in the past 3 months, part of a coordinated campaign that stretched across multiple star systems. Each strike followed the same pattern: appear without warning, eliminate all resistance, leave no evidence of human involvement. Course laid in for the next target, Yunbai reported. The supply depot in the Vega system. Genesio nodded. Depot was protected by a squadron of Concordat warships, but that wouldn't matter. The humans had learned to fight in ways that alien military doctrine couldn't understand or counter. They struck from directions that shouldn't be possible, using weapons that adapted faster than defensive systems could respond. 3 days later, Admiral Kethrin stood in the command center of Concordat military intelligence, staring at reports. That made no sense. The holographic display showed the locations of 17 facilities that had been attacked in the past 6 months. Each attack was different, but they shared common elements that defied explanation. No distress signals, reported intelligence analyst Vertum. No evidence of conventional weapons. No signs of boarding or forced entry. The facilities simply ... stop functioning. What about survivors? Admiral Kethrin asked. None, sir. In every case, all personnel vanish without trace. Security recordings show normal operations, then sudden system failures that conveniently destroy all evidence of what happened. The Admiral studied the tactical display, looking for patterns that his logical mind could understand. The attacks seemed random, hitting mining stations, supply depots, research facilities, and communication relays with no apparent strategic value. There were no demands for territory, no attempts to capture resources, no political messages. It's psychological warfare, observed tactical analyst Zephyr. Someone is trying to create fear and uncertainty. They want us to feel vulnerable. But who? Admiral Kethrin demanded. Our intelligence networks show no evidence of hostile alien powers capable of these attacks. The technology required shouldn't exist. Reports were coming in from across the galaxy. Ship crews reported impossible sightings of vessels that appeared on sensors for moments before vanishing completely. Trade routes that had been safe for centuries were now experiencing mysterious equipment failures and unexplained disappearances. The whispers had begun in the outer colonies and were spreading inward toward the core worlds. Alien populations spoke in hushed tones about ghost ships that materialized from nothing and disappeared without trace. Some of the older species had begun to remember legends about the extinct humans, wondering if somehow the dead could return. Oh. Sir Vertam said quietly, "There's something else. The attacks all occurred in former human territory." Admiral Kethrin felt something cold settle in his stomach. The humans had been declared extinct 5 years ago. Their worlds had been recolonized, their history erased from official records. But what if the erasure hadn't been as complete as everyone believed? Possible. He said, "We confirm their extinction." But even as he spoke the words, Admiral Kethron wondered if they had created something far worse than the species they had tried to destroy. Admiral Giwu stood at the center of a bridge that hummed with technology no alien engineer could understand. Around him, displays showed star maps that included systems the Concordat had never discovered, marked territories that existed in the spaces between official galactic boundaries. His hair had turned silver during the 30 years since the erasure, but his eyes burned with the same fire that had sustained humanity through its darkest hour. "All transmitters ready, sir," reported Communications Officer Dayun, her fingers dancing over controls that combined human intuition with evolved alien technology. "We're tapped into every major communication network in the galaxy." Gilwu nodded, looking out through the viewport at the fleet that surrounded his flagship. Hundreds of ships hung in formation, each one unique, each one impossible. They had been built in the hidden shipyards scattered throughout the void, constructed from salvaged materials and powered by hybrid engines that could bend space in ways that Concordat's physicists claimed were impossible. The ships bore no markings. Under no flag appeared in no registry. They were crewed by humans who had never seen Earth, born in the darkness between stars, and raised on stories of a world they would never visit. These new humans were faster, stronger, smarter than their ancestors, evolved for life in the harsh emptiness of space. "Begin transmission," Jiwoo ordered. Across the galaxy, millions of screens and communication devices, the impossible happened. Every major broadcast network, every military communication channel, every civilian entertainment system simultaneously displayed the same image: the face of a man who should not exist, speaking for a species that had been declared extinct 3 decades ago. "People of the galaxy," Jiwoo began, his voice carrying across light years to reach every inhabited world, "you know us as the humans. You were told we were extinct. You were told we were erased from history for the good of galactic peace. On the core world of Zentara Prime, Concordat Supreme Chancellor Vexanari watched the transmission with growing horror. Around the council chamber, representatives from dozens of alien species stared at their screens in shocked silence. The humans' words were being translated into every major galactic language simultaneously, broadcast on frequencies that their best engineers claimed were impossible to access. "You built your cities on our graves," Jiwoo continued. "You gave our worlds new names and wrote new histories that pretended we never existed. You thought you had solved the problem of human unpredictability by simply removing humans from the equation? In the outer colonies, alien workers stopped their daily routines to stare at screens showing the ghost of a dead species.
Some of the
Older aliens remembered the humans, remembered the fear their rapid expansion had caused among the established galactic powers. Most had grown up believing humans were just another extinct species, a cautionary tale about what happened to civilizations that grew too fast. But you made a mistake," Giwu said, his eyes reflecting the cold light of distant stars. "You didn't destroy us. You scattered us to the winds and forced us to become something new. Something you never imagined." Behind him, the bridge of his impossible ship showed glimpses of technology that violated known physics. Crew members moved with inhuman grace and speed, their enhanced reflexes allowing them to operate systems that would have overwhelmed baseline humans. These were the children of the void, evolved for survival in the harshest environment the galaxy could offer. "For 30 years we have watched you from the darkness," Jiwoo continued. "We have seen your cruelty, your oppression, your willingness to destroy entire species when they become inconvenient. We have learned that the galaxy needs something it has never had before." On military bases throughout Concordat space, alarms began to sound as defensive systems tried and failed to trace the source of the transmission. The signal was coming from everywhere and nowhere. Broadcast from transmitters that existed in the spaces between mapped star systems. "We are no longer the humans you tried to erase," Jiwoo said. "We are something new. We are the consequence of your choices. We are the echo of what you tried to silence." The image shifted to show the vast fleet surrounding his flagship. Ships that looked like they had been grown rather than built, their hulls shifting and adapting to the space around them. Weapons that existed in no database tracked targets that weren't there. Engines that shouldn't work, propelled vessels through dimensions that official science claimed were impossible. "We have become the galaxy's immune system," Giwu announced. "We appear where tyranny takes root. We strike down those who would erase others as you tried to erase us. And then we vanish back into legend, waiting for the next time we are needed." Supreme Chancellor Vexnari tried to order the transmission cut, but his technicians reported that they had no control over their own systems. The human signal was using their own networks against them, turning their technology into a weapon of words and images. "You cannot find us because we live in the spaces you ignore," Giwu said. Giwu said, "You cannot fight us because we have learned to fight in ways your minds cannot understand." Giwu said, "You cannot destroy us because we have already died once, and death has made us stronger." The transmission began to fade. Quo's final words echoed across the galaxy with the weight of prophecy. "We are watching. We are waiting. When injustice rises, when the powerful crush the weak, when extinction becomes policy, we will be there, not as conquerors, but as consequences." The screens went dark, leaving the galaxy in stunned silence. In the void between, stars the impossible fleet began to disperse, each ship vanishing into hyperspace, using engines that science said couldn't exist. Humanity had found something more powerful than revenge. They had become myth itself, and myths once born never truly die.